The Velker advance. Commander Thrace Kellyan stood on the bridge of the UHNS Defiant Horizon, watching the tactical display paint a grim picture across the holographic interface. Red markers, 17 Velker dreadnoughts, pushed through the Arcturus Nebula like a crimson tide, their weapon signatures blazing hot enough to distort the sensor readings. Distance to the colony? Thrace asked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her dark skin. 43 million kilometers and closing, replied Lieutenant Jackson Rourke, his fingers dancing across his console. New Meridian's evacuation is only 60% complete. Thrace clenched her jaw. New Meridian, home to 4 million souls, mostly farmers and their families who'd spent 3 generations turning a barren rock into something resembling Earth. The Velker Empire had declared the entire sector their territory 2 weeks ago, giving humanity 72 hours to vacate 12 colonies. When the deadline passed, they'd begun their advance. The Velker weren't interested in negotiation. A reptilian species standing 9 feet tall with crystalline scales that refracted light, they'd conquered 40 systems in the past century. Their philosophy was simple: might makes territory and weakness deserves extinction. Captain Soren's been on comms, Jackson continued. The Iron Resolve and the Stormbreaker are requesting orders. The Velker are broadcasting their ultimatum again. Thrace pulled up the message. The Velker commander, a brute named Kraxus the Unyielding, filled the screen, his purple eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. His translation collar rendered his hissing speech into flat, mechanical English. Human vermin. Your presence in Velker space is terminated. Surrender your vessels and colonies or be annihilated. You have demonstrated your species' weakness. We grant you 1 cycle to flee. After that, we hunt. The message ended with what Thrace assumed was a Velker laugh, a sound like steel scraping against bone. They think we're afraid, muttered Sergeant Kira Voss from the weapons station, her red hair tied back in a severe bun. They think running means we've given up. Let them think that, Thrace replied quietly. She turned to her communications officer. Ensign Tavin, open a channel to Admiral Cade at Gibraltar Station. Use quantum encryption, priority alpha. The young ensign's blue eyes widened. That's flagged for extreme circumstances only, ma'am. I'm aware. Do it. Seconds later, Admiral Marcus Cade's weathered face appeared on screen. The old warrior had served in the First Contact Wars, back when humanity learned they weren't alone in the universe, and that their neighbors weren't friendly. Commander Kellyan. I'm watching the Velker advance. Tell me you have good news. Negative, sir. They'll reach New Meridian in 16 hours. We can't evacuate everyone in time, and we're outnumbered nearly 6 to 1. Admiral Cade's expression didn't change. And your recommendation? Thrace took a breath. I recommend we initiate Protocol Phantom, sir. The bridge went silent. Every officer knew what that meant. Admiral Cade studied her for a long moment. You understand what you're asking? This fails, we lose everything. New Meridian, your fleet, and possibly our credibility as a defensive force. If we stand and fight, we definitely lose everything, Thrace countered. The Velker have fought 87 species. They have patterns, predictable tactics. They expect their enemies to defend territory to the death because that's what honor-bound civilizations do. But sir, we're human. We wrote the book on asymmetric warfare. A thin smile crossed the Admiral's face. Your father would be proud. He always said the best victory is the one your enemy doesn't see coming. He paused. Protocol Phantom is authorized. You have full discretion on execution. Give them hell, Commander. The transmission ended. Thrace turned to her crew. Jackson, calculate a retreat vector that looks panicked. Erratic jumps, inconsistent courses. Make it look like we're running scared. Kira, power down all weapons systems. I want us to read as a fleeing civilian convoy. Captain Soren won't like this, Jackson warned. Captain Soren is a soldier. He'll follow orders. Thrace pulled up the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Commander Kellyan. We are implementing immediate withdrawal from New Meridian. Broadcast distress signals. Make it look desperate. Light up every emergency beacon. And for God's sake, make them believe we're terrified. She glanced at the tactical display one more time. The Velker were accelerating, smelling blood in the water. One more thing, she added, her voice dropping. Get me Lieutenant Commander Reina Vasquez. Tell her the ghosts are greenlit. As her crew scrambled to execute the orders, Thrace allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The Velker had studied 87 species. They understood honor, pride, and territorial defense. They didn't understand humans. And that would be their fatal mistake. The Velkur's triumph. Craxus the Unyielding watched the human vessels scatter like frightened prey, and satisfaction thrummed through his crystalline scales. His command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominion gave him a perfect view of the tactical sphere, where green markers tracked the fleeing human ships. Pathetic mammals, hissed his second-in-command, Vexor the Sharp-Clawed. They abandoned their nest colony without even a challenge. Such dishonor. Craxus flexed his talons against the throne's armrests. This is why they will never be conquerors. Courage is bred in the crucible of conquest. These humans have only known peace and comfort. When faced with true warriors, they reveal their weakness. The tactical officer, a younger Velkur named Syrinx, turned from his console. Commander, the human colony's defense grid has been deactivated. Their orbital platforms are powering down. They're broadcasting surrender on all frequencies. Of course they are. Craxus rose from his throne, his 9-foot frame imposing even among his own kind. What is the status of their military vessels? Fleeing into the outer system. 17 ships confirmed, 3 military carriers, the rest appear to be converted civilian craft. They're broadcasting distress signals and emergency beacons. Their jump drives are charging, but their trajectories are erratic, Commander. Almost panicked. Vexor barked a laugh. They don't even have the discipline to maintain formation. This is the species that claimed to have defeated the Kryn Raiders? I suspect those victories were fabrications. Craxus studied the display. By Velkur tradition, prey that fled deserved to be hunted. It was the natural order, the strong pursued, the weak scattered and died. His ancestors had conquered their homeworld by embracing this truth. Every Velkur learned it from hatching. Retreat equals defeat equals death. Pursue them, Craxus commanded. Leave 3 dreadnoughts to secure the colony. The rest of the fleet will hunt down these cowards. I want their commanding officer brought to me alive. They will witness their species' humiliation before execution. What of the colony inhabitants? Syrinx asked. Standard protocol. Those who submit will be given worker status. Those who resist will fertilize their own soil. Move out. The Velkur fleet surged forward, their dreadnoughts cutting through space with predatory grace. Craxus felt the ancient hunger of the hunt singing in his blood. This was what Velkur lived for, the chase, the capture, the kill. The human ships were already 500,000 kilometers ahead, their engines burning bright with desperation. Craxus could see their formation fragmenting, some ships veering off on independent courses, others clustered together like frightened herd beasts. They're making for the asteroid belt, Vexor observed. Foolish. They'll trap themselves. Predictable, Craxus agreed. Lesser species always seek to hide among rocks when confronted with superior force. Just course. I want them corralled, not destroyed. Dead prey provides no lesson to others. As the Eternal Dominion accelerated, Craxus reviewed the intelligence files on humanity. A relatively young spacefaring species, only 2 centuries beyond their homeworld. They'd settled 37 systems, most clustered near their origin point. Their military was small, focused on exploration rather than conquest. The files mentioned something called guerrilla warfare from their primitive past, but such tactics had no place in modern space combat. Between stars there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to ambush from. Space warfare was about firepower, shields and tonnage. The Velkur excelled at all 3. Contact in 12 minutes, Syrinx announced. The humans are attempting to power weapons. Shall we jam their systems? No. Let them fire their pathetic weapons. Let them exhaust themselves. The galaxy will learn what happens to species that occupy Velkur territory. Craxus watched the chase unfold with satisfaction. 3 human ships had already suffered engine failures, drifting helplessly. The others showed signs of cascading system failures, life support flickering, weapons platforms misfiring. Desperate and incompetent. Commander, Vexor said suddenly, his tone uncertain. The human vessels are scattering into the asteroid field. They're splitting up completely. No coordination at all. Panic? Craxus said dismissively. Each ship's commander is trying to save themselves. It makes them easier to eliminate individually. But something nagged at him. The files had mentioned humanity's history of warfare among themselves, thousands of years of conflict, of evolution in the art of combat. Yet these ships moved like untrained civilians. He dismissed the thought. Every species claimed a warrior heritage. When faced with true warriors, such claims evaporated like morning frost. Pursue them all, Craxus commanded. Divide the fleet. I want every human vessel accounted for within the cycle. The Velker dreadnoughts spread out, each one more than capable of handling multiple human ships. Craxus felt the thrill of certain victory as his ship closed on a cluster of 3 human vessels hiding behind a massive asteroid. "Target the engines," he commanded. "Disable, don't destroy. I want prisoners." But as his weapons officer prepared to fire, something strange happened. The human ship's distress signals cut off simultaneously. Their life support readings, which had been critically low, suddenly normalized. And their weapons, supposedly malfunctioning, blazed to life with targeting solutions already locked. "Commander." Cyrix's voice held alarm. "Those aren't civilian ships. They're—" The asteroid itself exploded. Not from weapons fire but from charges planted inside it. The explosion created a massive debris cloud traveling at lethal velocity, straight toward the Eternal Dominion. And through the debris came something that made Craxus's blood run cold. Sleek, black vessels uncloaking one by one. Ships that hadn't been on any sensor scan. Ships that moved with predatory precision that made Velker dreadnoughts look clumsy. On his command screen, a human face appeared. Female, dark-skinned, with eyes that held no fear, only cold calculation. "This is Commander Thrace Kellyan," she said. "You wanted to see what happens when humans retreat? You're about to learn the difference between running away and leading you into a trap. Welcome to Protocol Phantom, Craxus. Class is in session." The transmission cut off as the first human weapons fire tore into his fleet. Ghosts in the dark. Lieutenant Commander Reyna Vasquez felt the familiar cold focus settle over her as the Shadow Raptor shed its stealth field. Around her, 7 more Ghost-class ships materialized from nothing, their quantum dampeners cycling down to allow their weapon systems full power. "All Ghosts, weapons free," she transmitted on the encrypted channel. "Remember, disable their engines first. We want these bastards to watch what happens next." The Velker dreadnought closest to her, the Blood Talon, was still trying to process what was happening. Its shields were oriented toward the human fleeing ships, not toward the asteroid belt where Reyna's team had been hiding for the past 16 hours. That mistake cost them everything. The Shadow Raptor's main railgun spoke once, a single tungsten carbide penetrator moving at 40% light speed. It punched through the Blood Talon's rear shields like they were tissue paper, severing the main drive coupling. The dreadnought lurched, momentum carrying it forward even as secondary explosions rippled through its engineering section. "Target neutralized," her weapons officer, Chinmoro, reported with satisfaction. "They're dead in space." "Next target," Reyna commanded. Her ship pivoted with grace no ship that size should possess, a gift of human engineering that prioritized maneuverability over brute armor. "Light up the Crimson Fong." The Ghost ships had been Admiral Cade's pet project for 5 years. Designed in secret, built in hidden shipyards in the Oort cloud, crewed by volunteers who didn't officially exist. They were humanity's answer to a brutal reality. In the galaxy, humans were outgunned, outnumbered, and often underestimated. The first 2 facts were problems. The third was an opportunity. "Reyna, this is Jackson," her earpiece crackled. "The Velker are trying to regroup. 4 dreadnoughts are breaking pursuit to form defensive positions. Looks like Craxus finally realized he's been had." "Copy that. How's our timing on the second wave?" "Captain Soren and the Iron Resolve are 60 seconds out. The civilian ships are already dropping their disguises. Craxus is about to have a very bad day." Reyna allowed herself a tight smile. Protocol Phantom had been based on ancient Earth warfare, specifically, the tactics of commanders like Hannibal and von Gwynjayap. Feint a retreat, draw the enemy into overextension, then hit them from multiple directions with forces they didn't know existed. The Velker had conquered 87 species, but none of those species had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. Humans had. Every trick, every strategy, every brutal lesson learned in Blood on Earth had been cataloged, refined, and updated for space warfare. "Shadow Raptor, you've got 2 fighters inbound," Chin warned. Reyna saw them on sensors, small Velker interceptors, fast and deadly. They were trying to swarm her ship, classic Velker tactics. Overwhelm with numbers while the big guns repositioned. "Countermeasures," she ordered calmly. "Pattern Delta 9. The Shadow Raptor released a cloud of microdrones, each one broadcasting a false ship signature. To Velker sensors, one ship suddenly became 50. The interceptors' targeting systems went haywire, their AI unable to determine which contacts were real. By the time they figured it out, the Shadow Raptor was already behind them. 2 shots, 2 expanding debris clouds. "All Ghosts sit rep," Reyna transmitted. The responses came back quickly. Ghost 2 had disabled the Savage Claw. Ghost 4 had taken out the Iron Storm's shield generators. Ghost 7 was engaged with a Velker heavy cruiser but holding its own. Only Ghost 5 was silent. Ghost 5 report, Reyna said, feeling a cold weight in her stomach. Static then, Ghost 5, compromised. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7. We're venting atmosphere. The voice belonged to Marcus Webb, one of her oldest friends. Life support failing. But we took out the Void Reaper's weapon array before they got us. Tell my kids. Save it, Marcus. You're going to tell them yourself. Chin, plot a rescue trajectory. All ghosts, cover Ghost 5's position. Reyna, if we break formation, Chin started. Do it. The Shadow Raptor burned hard toward Ghost 5's last position, weaving through debris and weapons fire. Reyna could see the damaged ship now, tumbling slowly, emergency lights flickering. The Velker dreadnought that had hit it was moving in for the kill, its remaining weapons charging. Not today, Reyna muttered. She opened a channel to the fleet. This is Ghost 1 to all human vessels. Priority target, Dreadnought designated Tango 7. Light it up. What happened next would later be shown in every military academy in human space. The fleeing human ships, which had been civilian vessels retrofitted with military-grade weapons, reversed course simultaneously. They'd been designed to look helpless while actually being deadly, their true capabilities hidden until the perfect moment. That moment was now. 17 ships opened fire as one. Not the scattered, panicked fire of desperate survivors, but coordinated volleys timed to hit simultaneously from multiple vectors. The Velker dreadnought's shields held for approximately 4 seconds before collapsing under the focused assault. The ship didn't explode. Reyna had been specific in her orders: disable, don't destroy. The Velker needed to survive this. They needed to go home and tell others what had happened here. They needed to understand that humans didn't retreat because they were afraid. Humans retreated because they were clever. Ghost 5, we're coming alongside, Reyna transmitted. Prepare for emergency docking. As her crew worked to rescue Marcus and his people, Reyna checked the overall tactical situation. 8 Velker dreadnoughts disabled or destroyed. 6 more trying to flee. And in the middle of it all, Commander Kellyan's defiant horizon, broadcasting on all Velker frequencies. Craxus, Kellyan's voice rang out across space. You wanted a hunt? Congratulations. You found one. But you made one critical error, you assumed you were the hunter. Reyna grinned fiercely. The ghost ships had done their job. Now it was time for the main event. And somewhere out there, the Velker were learning a lesson their ancestors should have taught them. Never corner prey that might be a predator in disguise. The price of arrogance. Craxus's command throne trembled as another impact rocked the Eternal Dominion. Warning lights bathed the bridge in red, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled his nostrils. Around him, his crew scrambled to contain the damage, their earlier confidence replaced by something Velker rarely experienced: fear. Shields at 37%. Cyrix shouted over the alarms. Port side weapons array offline. The humans are targeting our drive systems. I can see that. Craxus snarled, his claws gouging marks in his throne's armrests. On the tactical sphere, the situation had transformed from a victorious hunt into a nightmare. His fleet, the pride of the Velker Third Armada, was being systematically dismantled by ships that shouldn't exist and tactics that made no sense. No, that wasn't true. The tactics made perfect sense. He just hadn't seen them coming. Commander, the Void Reaper and Savage Claw are both disabled, Vexer reported, his voice strained. The Blood Talon is drifting. Communication from Fleet Master Dyrax. He's requesting permission to withdraw. Denied. Craxus roared. We are Velker. We do not flee from. Another impact cut him off. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as something tore through its starboard shield generator. Craxus watched in disbelief as one of the sleek black human ships, impossibly fast, impossibly agile, streaked past his viewport before vanishing again. How were they disappearing from sensors? The human commander is hailing us, the communications officer announced. She's broadcasting on all frequencies. Ignore her, Craxus snapped. Focus all remaining weapons on. But the communication officer had already triggered the message. The human female appeared on every screen on the bridge, the same one from before. Commander Kellyan. Her expression was calm, almost serene. Craxus, I'm giving you one chance, she said. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your ships will be stripped of offensive capabilities, your crews will be detained until diplomatic channels can be established. If you comply, no more Velker will die today. Arrogant mammal. Kraxus spat at the screen. You think this minor ambush represents victory? The Velker Empire has 1,000 fleets. You have made an enemy that will pursue your species to extinction. Kellyan's expression didn't change. I was hoping you'd say that. Because you need to understand something, Kraxus. This isn't an ambush. This is a lesson. She leaned forward. You've conquered 87 species. Every one of them fought you head-on, defending their territory with honor and courage. And every one of them lost because they played by your rules. She paused, letting that sink in. Humans don't play by anyone's rules but our own. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We've perfected every form of warfare imaginable, from open battle to guerrilla tactics to psychological operations. We know how to make an enemy see what we want them to see. And what we wanted you to see was weakness. On the tactical display, Kraxus watched as more human ships appeared. Heavy cruisers that had been hiding in the outer system, their heat signatures masked by the debris field. They formed a perfect encirclement around his scattered fleet. You thought our retreat was cowardice, Kellyan continued. But retreating isn't about fear, Kraxus. Sometimes it's about luring your enemy into a position where you can destroy them. You know what we call that on Earth? Strategy. You will pay for this treachery. Kraxus hissed. For the first time, Kellyan smiled, but it was cold, without humor. Treachery? We're at war. You declared it when you invaded our space. You just assumed war would be fought on your terms. She glanced at something off-screen. Your flagship's shields are failing. Your fleet is scattered and disabled. And the 3 dreadnoughts you left at New Meridian? Check your sensors. Kraxus's blood ran cold. He turned to Cyrix. Status of the occupation force? Cyrix worked his console frantically, then looked up with something Kraxus had never seen in a Velker's eyes. Horror. They're gone, Commander. All 3 dreadnoughts. Destroyed. How? The colony, sir. It wasn't defenseless. They had weapons platforms hidden underground, powered down until our ships entered close orbit. That. Cyrix trailed off. Kellyan's voice filled the bridge again. Then 4 million colonists who you thought were helpless farmers showed you that every human settlement is also a fortress. We learned that lesson too, the hard way, centuries ago. We don't build cities anymore, Kraxus. We build strongpoints that look like cities. Kraxus felt his certainty crumbling. Everything he knew about warfare, about conquest, about the nature of weaker species, it was all being torn apart by this human commander who spoke with such casual confidence. Last chance, Kellyan said. Surrender now or I give the order to destroy your flagship. And then I'll send what's left of your fleet home with a message for your empire. Humanity is not prey. We're not territory to be claimed. We're not another species on your list of conquests. We're the ones who wrote the book on war, and we've been doing this since before your species discovered fire. Commander, Vexer said quietly, our shields are at 15%. Hull breaches on multiple decks. If they concentrate fire. Kraxus looked around his bridge. At the warning lights, the smoke, the fear in his crew's eyes. The Velker way was to fight to the death, to never show weakness. But the Velker way had just been beaten by tactics the Velker had never imagined. What guarantee do we have that you won't execute us? Kraxus asked, hating how the words tasted. You have my word as a military officer, Kellyan replied. And unlike your empire, humanity values its word. We'll treat your crews according to the rules of war. Yes, Kraxus, we have rules for war. Entire books of them. Centuries of laws about how to treat prisoners, how to conduct warfare, how to make peace. She paused. Your empire sees warfare as natural selection. We see it as a failure of diplomacy that should still be conducted with honor. That's the difference between us. Kraxus looked at the tactical display one final time. 12 of his 17 dreadnoughts were disabled or destroyed. His fleet was in ruins. And this human commander was offering him something the Velker rarely gave their enemies: mercy. Maybe that was another lesson his species needed to learn. All Velker vessels, Kraxus said slowly, each word like swallowing glass. Stand down. Power down all weapons systems. Prepare for boarding. On screen, Kellyan nodded. A wise choice, Commander. Trust me, you're going to want to survive this. Because when you return to your empire, you'll need to tell them what happened here. You'll need to warn them that humans are not like the other species you've conquered. And if your empire is smart, they'll take that warning seriously. The transmission ended. Kraxus slumped in his throne, feeling the weight of defeat for the first time in his life. Around him, his crew began shutting down systems, their movements mechanical, shocked. Vexor approached hesitantly. "Commander, what do we tell the Empire? How do we explain this?" Craxus thought about that. About how to explain to a culture built on strength and dominance that they'd been outthought, outmaneuvered, and defeated not by superior force but by superior strategy. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "We tell them that we encountered a species that doesn't fight like warriors, they fight like survivors. And there's nothing more dangerous in the universe than that." On the view screen, human boarding craft began approaching the Eternal Dominion. The lesson had been taught. Now came the hardest part, learning from it. The aftermath. 72 hours after the Battle of New Meridian, as the human military was already calling it, Thrace Kellyan stood in the command center of Gibraltar Station, watching the diplomatic circus unfold on multiple screens. "The Galactic Council is divided," Admiral Cade said, studying the readouts. "The Velkar ambassador is screaming about human treachery. The Zorithian collective is impressed. And the Mordath Union is suddenly very interested in establishing formal relations with us." Thrace rubbed her temples. Victory in combat had been the easy part. Now came the politics. What about the Velkar prisoners? Processing as we speak. Medical treatment for the injured, decent quarters for the rest. We're following the Geneva Conventions to the letter, even though technically those don't apply in space. Cade smiled grimly. "Several Velkar officers have requested to speak with you specifically. They want to understand how we did it. How we beat them? How we fought without honor, as they put it. Apparently, stealth tactics and strategic retreats violate every military principle they hold sacred." Thrace thought about that. "Schedule meetings with any who request them. If we're going to coexist with the Velkar, and we need to, they're too powerful to have as permanent enemies, they need to understand our way of war." Agreed. Speaking of which. Cade pulled up another screen. "Craxus wants to speak with you. Private channel, just him and you?" "The commander who led the invasion?" "The same. He's been cooperative. More than I expected, honestly. Whatever you said to him during the battle made an impact." Thrace considered. "All right. Patch him through to conference room 7. Private feed, but I want security monitoring." 10 minutes later, Thrace faced the massive Velkar commander across a holographic link. Craxus looked diminished somehow, his crystalline scales dull, his purple eyes lacking their earlier fire. "Commander Kellyan," he said, his translation collar rendering his hissing speech. "I requested this conversation to ask you a question." "Go ahead. Why did you spare us?" "In Velkar culture, defeated enemies are eliminated or enslaved. Mercy is seen as weakness. Yet you treated my wounded, housed my crew in comfort, and offered negotiations. Why?" Thrace leaned back in her chair. "Because we're not fighting to eliminate the Velkar, Craxus. We're fighting to make you stop eliminating others. There's a difference." "I don't understand." "I know. That's part of the problem." Thrace pulled up a holographic display between them, a star map showing human space and Velkar space. "Look at our territory. 37 systems, right? Now look at yours. 417 systems. You're more than 10 times our size." Craxus nodded slowly. "If humans wanted conquest," Thrace continued, "we'd be terrible at it. We're small, relatively weak in terms of numbers, and we lack the resources for sustained expansion. But here's what we're very, very good at: surviving. And the way you survive when you're outnumbered is you make the cost of attacking you too high to be worth it. The ambush. Not just the ambush. The entire strategy. We let you see what you expected to see: weak, frightened humans running away. We confirmed all your assumptions about us. And then we used those assumptions to destroy your fleet." Thrace met his eyes. "That's the lesson, Craxus. Humans are adaptation specialists. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own worst impulses. We're still here because we're flexible, innovative, and we never, ever fight fair if there's a smarter option. This is how your species fought each other? For thousands of years. We have more words for strategy and tactics in our languages than most species have for food. We've studied warfare the way other species study art or philosophy. It's part of our cultural DNA." Craxus was silent for a long moment. "My empire will not accept this defeat. They will send more fleets." "I know. And we'll be ready. But here's what I want you to understand and what I want you to tell your empire: we don't want to be your enemies forever. What we want is for you to leave us alone. Leave everyone alone who doesn't want to be part of your empire. The Velkar way is expansion, conquest, domination. It's who we are. Then change who you are," Thrace said bluntly. "Because the galaxy is changing. You've conquered 87 species who fought with honor and lost. But there are billions of humans, and every single one of us has studied the history of resistance, rebellion, and asymmetric warfare. If the Velkar Empire declares total war on humanity, we will lose planets, yes. We'll lose ships and lives. But we'll make every victory cost you more than you can afford. We'll turn every colony into a fortress, every retreat into a trap, every battle into a lesson on why humans are too expensive to conquer. She leaned forward. Or, your empire can accept that humans are willing to coexist peacefully. We'll trade, we'll talk, we'll even share technology that could benefit both our species. But we will not submit. That's not in our nature. Craxus studied her for a long time. You speak of your species with great confidence. Yet you are just one commander. I'm one of millions who think this way. The admiral who authorized Protocol Phantom? He fought in wars before you hatched. The lieutenant commander who led the ghost ships? She volunteered for a program where the survival rate in training was 60%. The colonists on New Meridian who destroyed 3 of your dreadnoughts? They were farmers who spent their evenings drilling for exactly that scenario. Thrace pulled up another image, footage from New Meridian showing the hidden weapons platforms emerging from underground silos. We built those defenses while we were planting crops, Craxus. Because humans learned a long time ago that civilization and military readiness aren't opposites. They're partners. This is madness, Craxus muttered. Your entire species is militarized. No, we're just prepared. There's a difference. Thrace closed the images. I'm sending you home with a proposal for your empire's leadership. A peace treaty with terms that respect both our territories. Your people can review it, negotiate it, and hopefully accept it. Because the alternative is a war that will cost both our species more than either can afford. And if my empire refuses? If they see your offer as weakness? Thrace smiled, but there was steel in it. Then we'll teach them the same lesson we taught you. And the next fleet you send, and the one after that. We'll turn every battle into a master class on human warfare. Eventually, your empire will do the math and realize that conquering a species of strategic geniuses isn't worth the price. She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Go home, Craxus. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humans aren't prey, aren't territory, and aren't victims. We're survivors. And the universe needs to understand what that means. The hologram flickered off, leaving Thrace alone with her thoughts. Admiral Cade's voice came through her comm. That was quite a speech. Think it'll work? Honestly? I don't know. But we had to try. War is expensive, Admiral. In lives, in resources, in the moral cost of violence. If we can avoid it through deterrence, we should. And if we can't? Thrace looked at the tactical displays showing human defense networks being upgraded across all colonies. New ghost ships under construction. Volunteers flooding recruitment centers, inspired by the victory at New Meridian. Then we prove that humans are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. A species that's really good at war precisely because we understand how terrible it is. Ripples across the stars. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Meridian, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the neutral station of Pinnacle Prime. Ambassador Helena Thorne represented humanity, walking into a chamber designed to hold representatives from 200 species. And every single one of them was staring at her. Ambassador Thorne, began Council Speaker Xyloth, a four-armed being whose species, the N3, had held the speakership for 3 centuries. The Council has reviewed reports of the incident at New Meridian. We have concerns. Concerns about what, exactly? Helena asked, taking her seat in the human delegation's pod. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair and eyes that had negotiated treaties on 40 worlds. She didn't intimidate easily. Concerns about the precedent, rumbled Ambassador Gorth of the Corthan Federation, his rocky features settling into what might have been a frown. Humanity employed deception, feigned retreat, and ambush tactics. These violate the established principles of honorable combat. Helena raised an eyebrow. Established by whom? The Corthan have their honor codes, the Velkar have theirs, the Zorithians have theirs. But humanity never agreed to any of them. We fight the way we've always fought, to win while minimizing casualties to our own people. That's the problem, Xyloth said carefully. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare has followed certain understandings. Opponents declare intentions, meet in designated battle zones, and engage in direct combat. What humans did at New Meridian circumvented all of these traditions. Helena looked around the chamber. Some species representatives looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. A few, she noticed the Zorithian ambassador especially, looked almost amused. Let me make sure I understand, Helena said slowly. The Velker Empire invaded human space, declared 12 of our colonies forfeit, threatened to kill anyone who resisted, and gave us 72 hours to evacuate our homes. And the Council's concern is that we defended ourselves too cleverly? The Velker acted within traditional conquest parameters, Gorth said. They declared their intentions, provided warning, and engaged in straightforward military action. They also threatened to exterminate civilians. An unfortunate but historically accepted aspect of conquest warfare. Helena felt her temper rising but kept her voice level. Then humanity formally rejects those parameters. We're not playing galactic conquest games. We're defending our people, our homes, and our sovereignty. And we'll use every tool at our disposal to do it. Even if those tools include treachery? Demanded the Corthan ambassador. Treachery? Helena's voice hardened. We announced our withdrawal publicly. We broadcast distress signals. We did everything that looked like retreat. If the Velker interpreted that as surrender instead of tactical repositioning, that's their mistake, not our treachery. But you specifically intended to deceive them, Xyloth pressed. Of course we did. That's called strategy. Helena pulled up a holographic display showing ancient Earth. For 10,000 years, my species has fought itself. We've developed tactics that you can't imagine because most of you have never had to. The Velker conquered 87 species before encountering us. You know why? Because those 87 species fought the way the Velker expected. She changed the image to show the Battle of New Meridian from multiple angles. We didn't. We studied the Velker's patterns, identified their assumptions, and exploited them. That's not treachery, it's warfare. The Zerithian ambassador, a being named Xyrus whose species resembled nothing so much as a crystalline mantis, clicked in what Helena recognized as their equivalent of laughter. The Corthan and others are frightened, Ambassador Thorn. Not of your actions at New Meridian, but of what they imply. Which is that humanity has introduced chaos into a stable system. For millennia, stronger species conquered weaker ones. The weak accepted this or died. Now humans have demonstrated that the weak can defeat the strong through cleverness rather than raw power. You've given hope to 1,000 species that thought they had none. Helena saw it then, the real reason for this emergency session. The established powers of the galaxy liked the current system because it favored them. Humanity had just shown everyone else there was another way. Good, Helena said firmly. Maybe the galaxy needed some chaos. Maybe it's time to question whether the strong dominate the weak is really the best system for an advanced civilization. Dangerous philosophy, Gorth rumbled. Maybe. But let me give you all some dangerous facts to go with it. Helena pulled up statistics. Since humanity achieved FTL travel 2 centuries ago, we've been attacked 17 times by various species who thought we looked weak. We've won 13 of those conflicts and forced stalemates in the other 4. Our winning percentage would make us one of the most successful military species in the galaxy, if we were interested in conquest, which we're not. She let that sink in. We're not warmongers. We're just really, really good at war when we need to be. And the reason is simple, we've practiced on each other for so long that fighting aliens is actually easier than fighting ourselves. You all have one set of tactics, one military philosophy. We have thousands, evolved from thousands of different cultures and conflicts. You're proud of this? Xyloth asked, sounding disturbed. No. I'm not proud that humanity spent millennia killing each other. I'm just realistic about the skills we developed because of it. And I'm going to use those skills to protect my species from being conquered, enslaved, or exterminated. Helena stood, her small frame somehow commanding attention in the massive chamber. I came here prepared to discuss a comprehensive peace treaty with the Velker Empire. I'm also prepared to propose new frameworks for galactic warfare, rules that all species, including humans, would follow. Things like protections for civilians, treatment of prisoners, prohibited weapons, and peaceful resolution procedures. But, she continued, her voice hardening, if the Council's position is that humanity should allow itself to be conquered because defending ourselves cleverly violates your traditions, then we reject the Council's authority on this matter. We'll defend ourselves by any means necessary, and the rest of you can deal with the precedent however you like. The chamber erupted in a dozen different languages. Some species representatives were shouting in anger. Others were nodding in agreement. Xyloth was hammering for order. Finally, the Zerithian ambassador Xyrus spoke, her translated voice cutting through the noise. Speaker Xyloth, I move that we table the discussion of humanity's tactics and focus instead on the ambassador's proposal for new warfare protocols. If humans are willing to constrain themselves in exchange for others doing the same, that seems far more productive than arguing about what already happened. There was a pause. Then, surprisingly, Gorth nodded. The Corthan Federation seconds this motion. We would prefer rules we all agree to rather than chaos. Helena hid her smile. They were scared. Good. Fear bred caution and caution bred negotiation. Very well, Xyloth said. Ambassador Thorn, you have 30 standard days to present a comprehensive proposal. The Council will review it and determine if common ground exists. As the session ended and Helena left the chamber, she felt a presence beside her. Xyrus, the Xerithian ambassador. That was well played, Xyrus clicked. You frightened them into negotiating. Was it that obvious? Only to those of us who recognize a strategic mind when we see one. Tell me, Ambassador, do humans truly have thousands of military philosophies? More actually. Every culture on Earth developed its own approach to warfare. Some emphasized honor, some emphasized deception, some emphasized economics or psychology or pure violence. We've spent the last 2 centuries compiling them all into our military academies. Xyrus made a sound like wind chimes. Terrifying. No wonder the Velker didn't stand a chance. They were fighting one species with the accumulated tactical knowledge of 1,000 cultures. That's the advantage of being a fractious, argumentative species, Helena said dryly. We've already made every military mistake possible. We've also found every solution. And now you offer to share those solutions through common rules? If it prevents unnecessary wars, yes. Humans don't want to conquer the galaxy, Ambassador. We just want to be left alone to explore it. But we will not be conquered. That's non-negotiable. Xyrus studied her with multifaceted eyes. The Xerithian collective would be interested in cultural exchange with humanity, particularly regarding strategy and adaptation. We find your species' approach refreshing. I'll inform my government. Perhaps we can turn this whole incident into something positive. As Helena headed back to the human embassy, she felt cautiously optimistic. The Battle of New Meridian had been a military victory. But if she could turn it into a diplomatic revolution, rules that protected smaller species from aggressive expansion while still allowing for self-defense, then maybe Commander Kellyan's tactical brilliance could lead to something even more important than winning one battle. Maybe it could lead to changing how the galaxy thought about war itself. The new precedent. 6 months after the Battle of New Meridian, Thrace Kellyan found herself somewhere she never expected. Aboard a Velker flagship, not as a prisoner or conqueror, but as an invited guest. The Dawnbringer, a newly commissioned dreadnought with subtle design changes influenced by human engineering, held representatives from 30 species. They were here for the signing of what the galaxy was already calling the Meridian Accords. Commander Kellyan, Craxus approached, his scales polished, his bearing proud but different somehow. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I almost didn't, Thrace admitted. Last time I saw you, your fleet was in pieces. Yes. That tends to make an impression. Craxus gestured toward a viewing port where New Meridian hung like a blue jewel. I've spent the past months explaining to my empire what happened here. It was difficult. I imagine admitting defeat always is. Not just defeat. Understanding. Craxus turned to face her fully. The Velker way is strength, conquest, dominance. For 3,000 years it worked. Then we encountered a species that didn't fight like warriors. You fought like. I learned the word from your military texts. Insurgents. Not quite, but close enough. The Empire didn't want to believe it at first. A minor species that actually studies warfare as a science? Impossible. But then the reports came in from other fronts. Human colonies we'd marked for easy conquest turned into nightmares. Ships we thought were fleeing led us into ambushes. Every engagement cost us more than we expected. Craxus made a sound like grinding stone. Velker respect. You didn't just beat one fleet, Commander. You changed how the entire galaxy thinks about military power. Thrace looked around the chamber. She saw the Xerithian ambassador, Xyrus, conversing with human military advisors. She saw Corthan representatives studying holographic displays of human tactics with fascination and horror. She saw species she'd never encountered before, all watching the humans with newfound wariness. Is that why we're here? She asked. To formalize humanity's scary reputation? No. We're here because Ambassador Thorn's proposal actually made sense. Rules for warfare that protect civilians, regulate weapon use, establish treatment of prisoners, and provide mechanisms for peaceful resolution. Craxus gestured at the gathering. 30 species have agreed to the accords. More are considering them. but not the entire Velker Empire. No, Craxus admitted. Many of my kind still see the Accords as weakness. But enough of us, especially those who faced human tactics, understand that the old ways don't work anymore. Humanity proved that technological superiority and numerical advantage aren't enough if your enemy is willing to be creative. Admiral Cade approached with a younger officer in tow. Commander Kellyan, Craxus, I'd like you to meet Lieutenant Commander Maya Okonkwo. She's been appointed as humanity's first military liaison under the Accords. Maya saluted both of them. She was a woman in her 30s with warm brown skin and eyes that held intelligent curiosity. Sirs, I'm honored to be here. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo will be working with Velker military academies, Cade explained. Teaching them human strategic principles and learning theirs in return. It's part of the cultural exchange provisions. Craxus looked intrigued. You're willing to teach us your tactics? The same tactics you used to defeat us. Some of them, Maya said carefully. The Accords work both ways. If we're all going to follow the same rules, we need to understand each other's military thinking. Besides, the galaxy faces threats that don't care about our internal conflicts. Better we learn to work together now. Philosophical, Craxus observed. But what happens when the Accords are tested? When a species decides honor matters more than rules? Then they face the consequences, Thrace said quietly. The Accords include mutual defense provisions. Any signatory attacked by a non-signatory can call for assistance from other members. It's not a military alliance exactly, but it's close. Strength through cooperation rather than conquest, Zyrus chimed in, having approached during the conversation. A very human concept. Most species either dominate or submit. You've created a third option, coalition. We learned it the hard way, Admiral Cade said. Earth had 2 world wars before we figured out that cooperation beats conflict in the long run. We're hoping the galaxy can learn that lesson without quite so much bloodshed. A chime rang through the chamber, the signal that the signing ceremony would begin. Representatives moved toward a central platform where a holographic document floated, elegant text in 200 languages. Ambassador Helena Thorne stood at the podium, looking somehow taller than her 5 feet. Honored representatives, we gather here today at the place where humanity's way of war met the galaxy's expectations and, well, exceeded them. Polite laughter rippled through the chamber. But we're not here to celebrate that battle. We're here to ensure it becomes the last of its kind. She gestured to the document. The Meridian Accords represent something new, a galaxy-wide understanding that warfare, when it must occur, should be conducted with rules that preserve civilization even in conflict. These rules won't eliminate war. Human history proves that's probably impossible. But they can make war less devastating, less cruel, and less total. Helena paused, looking around at the gathered species. Every signatory here today agrees to protect civilians, treat prisoners humanely, restrict certain weapons, and, most importantly, exhaust diplomatic options before resorting to force. In return, we all gain something valuable: protection from the kind of unrestricted warfare that has destroyed species throughout galactic history. She turned to Craxus. The Velker Empire, which began this journey as humanity's enemy, has become our partner in creating these accords. That transformation, from adversary to ally, is the true victory we celebrate today. Craxus stepped forward, his massive frame contrasted with Helena's small one. The Velker Empire acknowledges that strength alone does not define greatness. Humanity taught us this through tactics we did not anticipate and mercy we did not expect. We signed these accords not from weakness, but from wisdom gained through hard experience. One by one, representatives approached the holographic document. Hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages of stranger varieties touched the surface, each signature glowing as it was registered. When Thrace's turn came, representing humanity's military forces, she placed her hand on the document and felt the slight tingle of the quantum signature being recorded. She thought about the ghost ships, Protocol Phantom, the gamble that could have failed catastrophically but instead changed everything. After the ceremony, as representatives mingled, Reina Vasquez found Thrace at a viewport overlooking New Meridian. The lieutenant commander had recovered from her injuries and was being promoted to captain. Thinking about how close we came? Reina asked. Always. If Protocol Phantom had failed, if the Velker had anticipated our ambush, if any one of 100 variables had gone differently. Thrace shook her head. We'd be having a very different conversation right now. But it didn't fail. And now look what happened. Reina gestured at the gathering. We didn't just win a battle. We changed the rules. For now. The accords are just words on a holographic document. They only work if species choose to follow them. True. But we've given them a reason to. Any species that violates the accords faces not just humanity's tactics, but a coalition response. That's a pretty good deterrent. Thrace smiled. When did you become so optimistic? Around the time I realized we'd survived something that should have killed us and turned it into a victory that might save millions of lives down the line. Seemed like a good moment for optimism. They stood in comfortable silence, watching New Meridian's lights twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere down there, 4 million people were living their lives, farming, working, raising children, because a risky plan had worked and a retreating fleet had actually been advancing toward victory. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, Thrace found herself in a quiet corridor with Craxus. The Velker commander studied a holographic display showing the battle from 6 months ago, his eyes tracking the movements of ships. I've watched this engagement 247 times, he said without looking away. Every time I find something new. A detail I missed. A moment when I could have realized what was happening. Don't torture yourself. We spent years planning Protocol Phantom. You had hours to respond to a situation you'd never encountered before. That's not comforting, Commander. It means humanity's advantage isn't just tactical brilliance, it's institutional preparation. You've weaponized learning itself. We call it standing on the shoulders of giants. Every human military officer studies battles going back thousands of years. We learn from victories and defeats, from brilliant commanders and disastrous mistakes. By the time we graduate from the academy, we've seen more warfare, through history, than most species experience in lifetimes. Craxus finally turned from the display. That's what I'm trying to explain to my people. The Velker thought we were apex warriors because we'd conquered so many species. But we were really just good at a very narrow type of combat. You showed us how narrow. So what happens now? Now, the Velker Empire adapts. Some of my kind will resist. They see change as weakness. But enough of us understand that the galaxy has moved on. Humanity didn't just beat us militarily. You beat us philosophically. He gestured at the Accords ceremony area. Rules for warfare. Cooperation instead of conquest. Protection for the weak. These are human ideas and they're spreading. Not just human ideas, Thrace corrected. The Zerithians contributed the civilian protection clauses. The N3 designed the dispute resolution process. The Korthan added the honor provisions. This is everyone's achievement. But it wouldn't exist without humanity forcing the conversation. We'd still be operating under might makes right if you hadn't proven there was another way. Thrace considered that. Maybe that's humanity's real contribution to the galaxy. Not our tactics or our technology, but our willingness to question whether the way things are is the way they should be. We've done it to ourselves for millennia, questioning governments, traditions, philosophies. Now we're doing it to galactic civilization. Dangerous thinking. Always has been. But it's how we progress. A message chimed on Thrace's comm, orders from Earth. She read them quickly then smiled. I'm being reassigned. New position. Special Envoy for Military Cultural Exchange. Apparently, I'll be traveling to different species' homeworlds, discussing tactics and strategy. Spreading the gospel of human warfare? More like sharing knowledge while learning theirs. The Accords work both ways, remember? We teach but we also learn. As Thrace prepared to leave, Craxus stopped her with a final question. If the Velker Empire had known what you were truly capable of, if we'd understood human military doctrine before invading, would we have attacked at all? Thrace thought carefully before answering. Honestly, probably not. You attacked because you thought we were weak and divided. If you'd known we were actually dangerous and unified when threatened, you'd have chosen diplomacy. Then Protocol Phantom wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about revealing the truth. Exactly. We didn't defeat you, Craxus. We introduced ourselves properly. Everything that happened after that, the Accords, the changes, the new understanding, came from you and other species finally seeing humans as we actually are. And what are humans in your view? Thrace smiled. Survivors. Adapters. Students of war who pray for peace but prepare for anything. We're the species that retreats not because we're afraid, but because we're thinking 3 moves ahead. We're the ones who turned defeat into victory so many times in our history that it's become our specialty. She held out her hand, a human gesture of respect that Craxus had learned. He grasped it carefully, his scaled hand dwarfing hers. I'm glad we're no longer enemies, he said. So am I. But remember, we never wanted to be. You just forced us to show you why that was a bad idea. As Thrace walked away, heading toward her ship and her new assignment, she felt the weight of what they'd accomplished. One battle, one desperate gamble, one retreating fleet that wasn't retreating at all. It had changed the trajectory of galactic history. Behind her, on New Meridian, 4 million people slept peacefully. Above them, the stars burned with the light of civilizations learning to coexist rather than conquer. And somewhere in the vast darkness, other species were watching humanity with new eyes, seeing not prey, not victims, but partners in building something better. The retreat that looked like defeat had become humanity's greatest victory. Not because they'd won a battle, but because they'd won the peace that followed. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all, turning warfare into wisdom, conflict into cooperation, and the oldest trick in the military playbook into a new chapter in galactic history.